Welcome back to part 3 of David Simpson's complicated tax series. In this video, we're tackling Schedule SE, the form that calculates David's self-employment tax, explains the 92.35% rule, and why gig workers owe so much tax than regular employees. Before we jump into Schedule SE, here's everything David has reported on Schedule C. He's doing Uber and DoorDash. He uses the cash method. His total gross income from Uber and DoorDash is $38,000. No returns, no cost of goods sold, no additional income. The expenses he has, $18,900 for car and truck expenses. Commission fees from Uber and DoorDash is $3,200. Phone, he used 80% for business use, $672. Miscellaneous other expenses, $520. He also has supplies of $350. Total expenses from lines 8 to 27B of Schedule C, $23,642. He's using the simple home office deduction. So his total home office deduction is $600. And his net profit is $38,000 of income minus $23,642 in expenses and minus $600 for the home office, $13,758. So this $13,758 is a number that flows into Schedule SE, the form where we calculate David's self-employment tax. Let's go through this form line by line using David's real numbers. So here's David's Schedule SE all filled out. Line 1A and line 1B skip. These are only for farm income or conservation program payments. David isn't a farmer, so these lines stay blank. Line 2, net profit or loss from Schedule C. We enter his net profit, $13,758. This pulls directly from Schedule C, line 31. This is David's Uber and DoorDash profit after all his business expenses. Alright, line 3, we multiply that by 92.35%, giving him $12,705. This is the famous 92.35% rule. Employees only pay half of their Social Security and Medicare taxes. Their employer pays the other half. But gig workers pay both sides of the tax. So the IRS reduces your profit to 92.35% to represent the employer portion. This smaller number, $12,705, is what David will pay self-employment tax on. Line 4A, 4B, 4C skip. It doesn't apply to him. These apply only if your income is under $400 or if you're a minister with special tax rules, but not in the case of David. Line 5A, 5B, line 6 also doesn't apply to David. He skips all that. All relate to church employee wages. David doesn't have any of that, so leave it blank. Line 7, Social Security wage base. That $176,100 is just the maximum income tax for Social Security. Lines 8A, 8B, 8C, 8D doesn't apply to David. Alright, line 9 also doesn't apply to David, so we leave this blank. That means when the form says multiply the smaller number, line 6 or line 9, we just use line 6 and multiply that by 12.4%. And that's how we got $12,705 on line 10. Line 11 is the Medicare portion. So $12,705 times 2.9% equals $369. Medicare tax has no income cap. So all of David's self-employment income is subject to the 2.9% rate. Line 12 is the total self-employment tax. It's the $12,705 times 12.4%, $1,575. Then we calculate the Medicare portion. $12,705 times 2.9% is $369. Add them together, gives us $1,944. That's David's total self-employment tax for the year. Line 13 is one half of the self-employment tax. So $1,944 divided by 2 is $972. Line 13 is blank because the IRS doesn't actually have you enter the number on this form. We just calculate half of the self-employment tax, which is $972, and then we'll enter that later on Schedule 1, line 15. So it's completely normal for the box to stay empty on Schedule SE. Now we have Part 2. These only apply to farmers or very low income self-employed people. David doesn't meet any of these rules, so we'll leave everything here completely blank and move on. And here's a special note about Schedule K1. Schedule SE includes self-employment income from Schedule C and from certain types of partnership income on Schedule K1. David does have a Schedule K1 later in his return, but we haven't covered it yet. So for now, we're only using his Schedule C income. But when we reach the K1 video later in the series, we'll come back and update the Schedule SE if any of that partnership income is subject to self-employment tax. And here's a part most people forget. W-2 employees only pay 7.65% for Social Security and Medicare. Their employer pays the other half. But gig workers, Uber drivers, DoorDash drivers, freelancers, pay the full 15.3% themselves. That's why David's self-employment tax is almost $2,000, even though his profit isn't very high. And that completes Schedule SE for David Simpson. We calculated his taxable self-employment income, broke down the Social Security and Medicare taxes, and explained why the 15.3% self-employment tax hits gig workers so hard. In the next video, we'll tackle Schedule 1. We'll take the $972 from line 13 of this schedule and enter it on Schedule 1, line 15, so you can see how it reduces his AGI. Then later in the series, we'll come back and take the $1,944 from line 12 of this schedule and enter it on Schedule 2, line 4, which eventually flows to Form 1040, line 23.